Hello and welcome to a new episode of our DeFiChain Tech Talk. In this format, we will present you the background of what's happening behind the scene. The core developers shows what's happening there on the development side, what are the next big things happening on DeFiChain. And today I'm happy that the focus will be on DeFi Meta Chain, the next big thing on DeFiChain. But before we start, please give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel that you don't miss this show in future. And feel free to comment later on, and also now in the live chat we try to answer all your questions. But then we should directly jump into the topic. Today I have three guests here. U-Zyn, you will give us an introduction to them and also the agenda. What's on this show today?
Hey everyone, thanks Dizzy, thanks for hosting us. Good to see you all again. It's been quite a while from the last one, and a lot of development has happened. And with myself today, I have Fusing. We haven't seen him for a while now because he's been busy working on DeFi Meta Chain. And today he's going to be sharing about the technicals on DeFi Meta Chain. We've been getting a lot of questions on how EVM is going to work in the native side, and Fusing is going to get very, very deep in the tech side on how that is all working and how that is safe. The key thing that a lot of people are asking about how can we be sure that it is safe? So Fusing will answer all of that. So if you have any questions there, we'll be happy to answer that. And as well, along with us today, we have U-Zyn. I think the first time that he's getting on the stream. U-Zyn is a product manager that's heading the birthday research part. So he's the one that put out the CFP on the hackathon launchpad and all of the great stuff that's going to happen on the DeFi chain and DeFi Meta Chain side. So he'll be sharing a lot on what's going what's going to look like on the hackathon, what's going to look like on the launchpad, on launch pool, what it means for all of us, what it means for all DeFi chain. I think that's going to be really exciting. And for myself, I'm going to be talking about ERC20 bridge, on how we intend to do that and how we intend to implement it with all this bridge hacks and all that in a way that we can do it in a way that's really safe and also increase the usability on the DeFi chain side.
Cool.
Yep. Cool. Yeah.
Great. Interesting topics. Yeah. Everything towards the future. Yeah. New things happening on DeFi chain. And then I would say jump into the hard topic of technical backgrounds on DeFi Meta Chain. So Fusing, you will present. Just let me show your screen and then you can start.
Okay, so DeFi Meta Chain. Short for DMC, or you can look at it as a EVM. So when I was preparing the slides, I realized this is very different from what I usually present. It's all words. It's all very technical, and there's very little images to even talk about like what it means. So do bear with me. So normally I try to make this interesting, but I find it very difficult to make technical talks interesting because they are very technical. So yeah, so a little bit about like the format of this showcase, or like talking about how the technical looks like. Just a bit of recap first. So this is part of the DFIP 2111B, so which is the vote of confidence that allows us to build the EVM support. So started as a research. Most of the research was trying to understand how a lot of the EVM was deployed into the blockchain ecosystem. I think that's very important that we wanted to do it different from how it was done. A lot of the projects that you see today that have the various flaws of the various shortcomings are all clones of Geth, if you get what I mean. It's pretty much just running EVM or running Ethereum chain and just brand it as a different chain. But I think the economics will be very different, and if you just brand it as a different chain, it will not make any sense, or you will not introduce anything new or introduce any new possibility. I think when a native chain, DeFi native chain was native DeFi was created, it changes how blockchains could be designed and how DeFi protocols can be different from the EVM chain. So this undertaking has to allow us to stretch the definition of what is native DeFi, or effectively what is DeFi. Yeah. So There is this presentation has its URL below. You can use this URL to look at what I'm specifically talking about. So as we develop the Meta native chain, we are actively documenting how we are developing it. So please, if you are very curious about the in-depth documentation, or if you want more documentation, you can refer to this site and to look at how each of it is structured. So with each slides, there will be a new section that is about that piece of content. Yeah. So to recap a bit first, this is a two-phase project. So the first phase, which is where we are today, is about the inception, about introducing smart contract capability through turning complete environment. So different from what native DeFi is, which is non-Turing complete. So this is introducing Turing complete to complement the non-Turing complete part. So for fast-paced innovation. So we want both native and both non-native to exist together. So what it means for compatibility's sake is your Ether.js client, your Web3 clients are compatible on day one. So like you can use MetaMask directly or any other compliance applications. So EVM alongside native DeFi. So the phase two is what mostly take out a lot of resources. We are building on phase one. Well, when we build on phase one, we need to have a foresight of how the phase two will look like, because phase two is about embracing multi-chain future. So there's about cross-chain, about extendability. So we can't ever incept something that cannot iterate on. So it's very important to build the phase one with modularity to allow for connectivity and automation that will to come in the future. Yeah. So a little bit of like what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to go very technical and talk about the meta chain consensus of basically how the logic will works. Then like how are we going to make it safe, and what does it mean to be consensus like, and more specifically how are we going to deal with the tokens on meta chain, and how are we going to bridge the tokens. Yeah. So meta chain consensus. So for the purpose of describing DeFi chain consensus at play, we use two definitions here. So you can think of native chain as the UTXO Bitcoin-based chain, while meta chain refers to the EVM-based chain. So this is a sort of the only diagram that we have to describe this. So native chain is what it is today, the UTXO-based ledger. This is the proof of stake, where you stake your 20,000 DFI, which allows you to mine a block on average every 30 seconds. And then it is adjust with a bit of a proof of work. So that is what it is today. So on meta chain itself, we use this thing called the proof of authority. So let me go in depth of what is that later. So to understand what is a proof of authority cannot stand alone, if you get what I mean by that. Basically, it have to be sort of authorized to do something. So native chain utilize a proof of stake, so POS. So similar to Bitcoin original core, which is POW mining algorithm. So the validator are selected in proportionate to their quantity of holding that they stake into in the associated currency. So 20k DFI in this case. So if you have more masternodes, you have more chances to create a block. So proof of authority on meta chain is a consensus method to designate a number of actors to validate the blocks on the meta chain. So what does proof of authority in relation to the native chain means is the meta chain validator are masternode that are directly appointed from the native chain group of validator. So if you have a masternode on native chain, you can validate a block on the meta chain. So running a masternode on native chain naturally allows you, the actor, to validate transaction on the native chain. So a masternode on meta chain will have the power to validate transaction on the meta chain network as they do on the native chain. So why we have to do something like this? So it's very important to operate on the consensus-like design, especially for phase two. To design for something for phase two, we need to have a very simplified consensus mechanism that we can actively integrate on. So the meta chain itself is just a network for EVM execution, very similar to how Ethereum execution layer. They call it the beacon chain, but in this case, we have two execution layer. So we have the native chain execution layer, we have the EVM execution layer. So the consensus-like design of Meta Chain directly borrows the consensus or utilize the consensus on the native chain. So it reduce a lot of complexity when it comes to peer-to-peer networking. Something like block propagation is something very, very complicated. You talk about network cascading, you talk about 51% attack, tons of problems when it comes to designing consensus. So what does this do for Meta Chain is it moves all of the consensus mechanism into native chain, and native chain being the network plane that move blocks around. So we can continuously iterate on native chain consensus while providing different execution layer. So when phase 2 is about connecting, when we hit phase 2, which we connect to other chains and connectivity, we can utilize the same mechanism of adding more execution layer that provides the connectivity to other chains. So connectivity between native chain is established through this common interface. So in this case, we use something similar to how Ethereum does it. We use JSON RPC for direct communication. So when native chain means a block, it allows the native chain to mean a block. So I constantly talk about phase 2 because what this is just a precedent for innovation. So I think Meta Chain, the idea or the vote of confidence is to look beyond what is possible today, which is the native chain consensus. So the Meta Chain consensus is designed to be consensus-like for continuous, sustainable, iterative development. So it's important that it's operated in sort of a parallel subnet to the native chain. So you can utilize the native consensus. So we could effectively change the consensus of native chain instead of having to worry about building two consensus layer. And eventually adding more execution layer, like the automation execution layer, and about connectivity to other chain. Yeah. So that pretty much sums up what Meta Chain consensus-like design is about. So it is about how it is a lot of focus is on the iteration, because it's about how we can plug into the current consensus and iterate by adding more execution layer in the future. So a lot of modularity is required, and we have to make sure that the consensus mechanism works well with existing ecosystem tools like MetaMask, like Ethereum, Ether.js, Web3 clients, and such. So now that you guys understood how the consensus layer works on Meta Chain, then I can talk to you about how the tokens and bridge works on Meta Chain, because those they go hand in hand. They provide the facility for messaging payload portaling, as you think of it that way. So I think before I even talk about like how we are going to bridge assets between native chain and Meta Chain, I think I have to sort of like describe what is blockchain bridge, or what is a blockchain bridge today. So a blockchain bridge today, or simply called as a token bridge sometimes, or a network bridge, there's a lot of name for them. There's a lot of portaling, tunneling. It's about allowing assets to be moved between different blockchains, as simple as that, or different networks. So some of the chains out there that are branded as the same blockchain, but they have different networks, we utilize the same mechanism of bridges to move between same ecosystem but different network. So bridge facilitate information transfer, as simple as that. Information, you have burned 10 DFI on native chain, therefore you are allowed to mint 10 DFI on the Meta chain. As simple as that, information transfer to enable moving your assets between chain. So one thing to note here is native chain and Meta chain belongs to the same DeFi chain ecosystem, but with different protocol functionality. And to think about it, generally how it works in the blockchain world is there are two types of chain. There are two types of bridges. So trusted bridge and trustless bridge. So to better understand how Meta tokens and bridge design works, I think it's better for me to describe how the different signatures of trusted bridge and trustless bridge are designed today. So I found the best resources to describe this is actually from Ethereum.org, which talks about different types of bridges. So do take a look at that. So two kinds of bridges: trusted bridge and trustless bridge. So trustless bridge operates using smart contract and algorithm, while trusted bridge depends on the authority. Basically, you trust a centralized authority to do something, and they hold on to your assets in escrow, as simple as that. Well, the trustless bridge doesn't depend on the authority. In the end, it depends on algorithm, or in this case, smart contract, or even knowledge proof to move assets between ecosystems. So the trust is on the blockchain or the security of the blockchain. So when you have trustless bridge, the trust assumptions of basically the custody of the funds are moved to someone else, and the security of the bridge is as secure as the operator. So if the operator get hacked, your bridge get effectively wiped out. So if you think of it from a bank scenario, if your banks get hacked, your money in the bank cease to exist. So in a trustless bridge it's pretty much the same thing, but the security doesn't lies on the central authority. So this is where they call it the code is law. So the code defines how assets are being moved. So when you talk about trusted bridge, users give out control of their crypto assets to the authority, while if you talk about trustless bridge, users give out access of their crypto to smart contract. So giving up the authority, giving up to smart contract or algorithms, as simple as that. So in a nutshell, we can say that trusted bridge have trust assumption. Basically, you trust something, and trustless bridge has trust minimized. Basically, you don't trust beyond the domains. The domain being the blockchain itself. So simply, trustless have the equivalent security of the underlying domain. The domain being the operator, the operator, which is the chain itself. Well, the trust assumption is you move it. Well, for the trusted bridge, you move it to the external validator to make your assets moving secure. So I'm not sure if this makes it easier to understand or makes it even more confusing to understand, but trust me, this has something to do with what I'm explaining later. So native DeFi chain native and DeFiChain Meta uses this thing called a trustless bidirectional asset bridging. That's the way we call it. So it is trustless. Okay, take a look at this word. Trustless have the equivalent security of the underlying domains. Meaning, if you bridge between, let's say, Binance Smart Chain and Ethereum chain, for example, you are trusting the domains, which is both Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, as well as the bridge contract that move it. So if the domain have, let's say BSC has a vulnerability which allows it to mine 100,000 blocks per second, and the trust assumption on the Ethereum side assume that the Binance Smart Chain can only mine, let's say, 1 block per hour, for example. So the trust assumption is gone. Therefore, when someone speed up the block, the Ethereum side won't be able to sort of like revert the transaction, because the trust assumption is only a certain amount of blocks can be produced per hour, and therefore this is like your security cushioning, if you think of it that way. So what it means in the meta chain context is the trustless bridge doesn't have to worry about the underlying domain, because the domain is the same, because the consensus that we use for the meta chain relies on the native chain consensus. So our bridge is trustless and has the equivalent security of a trustless bridge without the security worries of the underlying domains, because there won't be different domain. The native chain and the meta chain are in the same ecosystem. So they operate under the same domain, have the same consensus mechanism within the same ecosystem with the same validator. So one bridge transaction completes in one block, and one revert transaction completes in one block. So the underlying assumption here is the native chain is the one carrying the things forward, and the meta chain uses the same security trust boundaries, let's think of it, domains. So there is one ecosystem. There isn't bridging between different ecosystems. It's under the same umbrella. So how does that work? It's simply just 4 functions, if you can think of it that way. So DeFiChain introduced a set of smart contracts on each platform / chain to perform bidirectional minting and burning. So the supply of all DFI comes from Meta Chain. Native chain. So DFI or Meta Chain are all bridged from native chain, and if you want to bridge your assets back to native chain, you have to burn it on the Meta Chain bridge contract. So as simple as that, DX Meta bridge, Meta Chain bridge contract. So on the left is a native contract. On the right is a Solidity smart contract, as simple as that. And there is a balance on both sides that's being tracked. So if you move, let's say 1 million DFI on the bridge, on the Meta bridge, there's no way to move back 2 million from the Meta chain, because it simply didn't move 1 million away, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like always netting on itself. So if you move 1 million away from the native chain to the Meta chain, you can never move 2 million back. It's always a one-to-one relationship. Yeah. So there is native chain asset bridging and Meta chain asset bridging. As simple as that, when you send assets to the Meta chain, you are burning on the native chain. And once you then mint on the Meta chain, so the number increment. So when you were to send it back to the native chain, you are essentially burning on the Meta chain and then minting what was previously burned back into circulation. As simple as that. Yeah. So a bit of timeline. So it's a bit hard to estimate, but we have been sort of laser focused, and I think right now we have about I think if you look at the milestone, so there's milestone 1 and milestone 2. So I think this way we are doing a bit different from how we used to do the native chain releases. We are doing fast iteration, and we are making sure that everything is tested the way we do it on the product side. So I'm bringing my experience on working on products. I think most of y'all use the DeFiChain wallet, y'all use DeFi Scan, y'all use certain products where I think if y'all see the test, that's how we do it. And I think Meta Chain is about extending what native chain was. And essentially it's also about testing. It's a lot about improving what's the current status quo of how things was done. So the first milestone is all about getting towards the iterative testing and about like creating if you guys use the DeFiChain Light wallet and use the playground, you can see that like you can easily test by minting tokens from this network called the playground. So we are building all this ecosystem, all this tooling to support building the next stage of Meta Chain. Doesn't just stop at launching a network. It's also about how easy it is to test on Meta Chain. So that's it for the technical talk on Meta Chain. I hope this answer a few questions. Yeah, and yeah, many more to come.
Yeah, great, thanks. There was one question in yesterday's news show, and you now tackled a little bit the topic of the bridge. I show you it's a little bit different, not what you presented, but maybe you can answer. The question was if DFI on DeFi Meta Chain is an ERC20 token and can be traded on centralized exchanges. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this question?
So is the DFI on DMC ERC token? Okay, so this question is a bit hard to answer because this assumes by stating ERC20, you immediately assume the token is already on Ethereum. So therefore, if I would answer that question, we already have an ERC20 token that can already be traded on exchanges.
So I explained it also yesterday in the way that I said, okay, DeFi Meta Chain is an EVM layer, it's the format, but it's not the Ethereum blockchain, and centralized exchanges has access to the Ethereum blockchain and not to DeFi Meta Chain. If we want to transfer from DeFi Meta Chain to Ethereum, we also need a kind of bridge, right?
Yes, and this will be talked about by U-Zyn in 20 minutes.
Okay.
So hold on to that.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for presenting us a little bit into the techniques. Really great. I like this idea of yeah, the master nodes are responsible for both layers, and it's all in one hand. This makes you described it the bridge very easy and very secure. You don't have to rely on two parties. It's one. It's the native layer, which is the security for the bridge. Then maybe question from my side: how is it avoided that someone will not mint too many DFI on the native DeFi chain side without having it on the DeFi Meta Chain? I think you will count the amount of DeFi burned on the native side. For example, 10 users are burning 100 DFI and minting it on the DeFi Meta Chain. So we have 1000 DFI on the DeFi Meta Chain distributed over 10 persons. How it is avoided that not one person will go back with the whole amount and mint 1000 DFI on DeFi Meta on DeFi native chain. Do you understand the question?
Let me so 10 people have 100 DFI, so 10 people burn 100 DFI on the native chain. So now native chain has a deficit of 1000 DFI,
right?
And then Meta chain have a surplus of 1000 DFI. So 10 users, in order to move back the 1000 DFI, the 10 users have to transfer that 1000 DFI to that one user to move it back. If that makes sense. So okay, this side is a sort of the trust assumption. So the domain itself, now you have to trust that the EVM, when you send balances, you have to send it to that one guy, and the one guy has to move it back. Or you can send it to two people, 500, yeah. But there will never be, you will never allow that to happen. You get what I mean?
Okay.
Maybe let me add a little bit. So the difference between meta chain and native chain bridge to what we all commonly refer to as bridge is that what we normally see in the news and what we normally refer to as bridge are those that are across two different blockchains. Whereas on DeFi chain side, native and meta side, it's basically two chains, but consider one single domain. So any tokens that go across is part of the consensus itself. So you cannot have over mint on the other side, and the other side doesn't have the corresponding burn. So it's consensus. If we have that block is not valid. It's just part of the consensus. So it makes it very, very safe. And I also want to add one more thing is that what U-Zyn presented here also shows that the native side for DeFi chain is still going to be very key moving forward, even with EVM in there, because it's still the primary consensus driver into this whole DeFi chain thing. So for those of you who have 20K, go run the masternode, because you'll still be responsible for the consensus of even the EVM side moving forward. And this is how DeFi chain makes it in a very, very safe manner to introduce EVM to the native side. Very different from other blockchains out there.
Great. There was another question. It looks like someone wants to try out testnet. The question is, will there be an instruction on how I can develop contracts on the testnet?
I think the best way to answer this is how you would do on Ganesh or how you would do on Hardhat. It acts as the same thing. So this, I think the main reason why we wanted to do DMC or EVM is exactly that. We want to utilize the massive tooling today on Solidity and uses it. So what we do is how we test our code for MetaChain is we test compatibility with existing contracts, existing tools, existing systems. So you can take that assumption and use that assumption.
Cool. That's all from the chat. Thanks, U-Zyn, for presenting us the technical background of the DeFi Meta Chain. And then we go to the next topic. I think U-Ning, you will present, right?
Yep. Let me share my screen.
Yeah. And then we go on.
Okay. Hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So hi everyone. My name is Yuning, and as U-Zyn introduced, I'm actually a product manager at Birthday Research, and I actually oversee the development of the DeFi Meta Chain. So let's begin. So I just wanted to cover a bit of the motivation for why we even have a roadmap for DeFi Meta Chain. it actually all comes down to one very simple question, which is how can we, generate value for the DeFi chain community through the introduction of, DeFi Meta Chain. And after thinking about it, we actually, crystallize it into two key goals. And, by value, what we really want is to, firstly, grow the number of members in the DeFi chain community. And the second goal that we have is to really increase the, price of DFI token, because, we are all in this community and we're all investing in it. And you can see that there's a linkage between growing the numbers of members in DeFi chain community and also the DFI token price. And that's because when the number of members grow, it will actually, spill over into increasing the price of DFI token, and vice versa. When the price of DFI token increase, it will actually also help to attract more people to join the DeFi chain community. And to achieve these two goals, we actually laid out a series of programs like the $100 million accelerator program, the hackathon, the launchpad and launch pool, and all these ideas are expected to synergize with each other to actually multiply the number of members we have, and to actually lead to a growth in the utility of the DFI token. Now I'll go into each of the programs bit by bit. First, I'll start with a launchpad. Now, I think Launchpad is actually not a new idea. It has been done by many other, platforms out there. Binance has its own version of Launchpad and stuff like that. But we still want to do a Launchpad because it is a tested and proven idea. And later on, I'll elaborate why, a Launchpad is so exciting and why it makes so much sense in the context of our community. But first, I just want to explain what Launchpad is, because there might be some people that don't know what a Launchpad is. So a Launchpad is essentially a initial DEX offering platform. Think of it as a platform where projects comes to you to actually list their project token. If someone wants to raise funds to expand their infrastructure, they can actually come to us and list their project token. Now, community members that are interested to invest in this project token can just take their DFI or DMC token. And what happens is that when the execution happens, the DFI token will be traded for the equivalent amount of project token. So I give you guys a layman perspective, and think of us as like the New York Stock Exchange. And if, let's say, a new project comes to us and say, hey, look, I want to actually raise a certain amount of fund, they will actually say, I'm going to give you 100 tokens. And any community member that are interested in this can just take their tokens, and then there will be an exchange. So from the community perspective, your input is actually DFI and DMC token, and you will get in return the project token. And from a project's perspective, you are actually putting forth your project token in return for DFI or DMC token that the community provided. Now, there are three key benefits to Launchpad. The first benefit is that it encourages buying of DMC and DFI token from the supply pool. I think it's very simple, because if you want to participate in a Launchpad, you definitely need to get DFI or DMC token. Now, the second benefit is even cooler, and this is actually backed by heuristics. Launchpad will actually bring new users into the DeFi chain ecosystem. What do I mean by that? A lot of projects that actually come to launch on Launchpad are actually projects that have already established for a certain period of time. And so when they come into our ecosystem and launch their project, they don't just bring new technologies and new content, they also bring about their existing community that they already have built up. They also bring new liquidity, to our ecosystem. I give you an example. We actually interviewed some, people from different companies when we were conceptualizing the Launchpad. So for Bybit, for instance, even during this bear market, when they actually launch a new project on Launchpad, it actually brings, or rather introduces, 15,000 new community members to their platform. I'm sure everyone here knows the size of the DeFi chain, community. Think about it. Every project is the equivalent of 15,000 new investors into our ecosystem, and that's during a bear market. In a bull market, it is actually around 25,000. So that's how exciting a Launchpad can be, and how much potential it has to drive the growth of DeFi chain. The last benefit is more of to do with the mechanism of Launchpad. And basically, to participate in a Launchpad, we can also introduce additional mechanism like asking people to lock up additional DFI or DMC for, added chances of getting more project token. I'll elaborate more in the next slide. So to actually actualize this whole launchpad, we actually broke up the development phase into three different phases. And the first phase is really very simple. It is to have a token distribution module so that we can actually distribute the project tokens to the community users, and also distribute the DFI tokens to the projects that are seeking funding. And there is also a staking module so that the community users can actually stake the DFI itself. So that's actually the minimum viable product that we are looking to launch. Now, in the next phase, we are looking at something called a tiered membership. Now, in our research, we realized that one of the challenges of many launchpad is that some of them might not have mechanisms to guard against a whale monopolizing the whole lion's share of token. For example, if let's say a whale has 10 million DFI, they can easily take up the whole liquidity of the project, and that makes the project not attractive to invest at all, because the small community users will then be at the mercy of the big whale. So to actually mitigate that, what we want to do is to cap a certain amount of project token that every investor can invest in, so that this cannot be manipulated by one single actor. Now, here is where a tiered membership will come in. So to actually give people that are very interested in this project an added chance of getting more project token, we can require them to stake a certain amount of token to increase their membership tier, so that they can then get a certain percentage more of the project token. And this then creates more DFI and DMC lockup in our ecosystem. As an additional idea that we are toying with is also to actually, in phase 2, create a launchpad token of its own. And what happens is that with this launchpad token, you will then, community will then now have to use the launchpad token to actually participate in any launchpad project. And the beauty of this idea is that we can then compel everyone to stake either DUSD, DFI, or DMC token to actually mint the launchpad token for the participation in future launchpad project. This then locks up a lot of this DUSD, DFI, and DMC token as well. Now, in the last phase of this launchpad, what we want to do is to, we ask ourselves a very fundamental question. How do we, differentiate ourselves from the many other launchpad out there? And one of the things that we came back to is really, we want to actually differentiate the kind of products that we offer to the community users. And that's where we came to the idea of actually creating a launchpad, not just for Web3 companies. We want to actually do a launchpad and launch pool for Web2 companies as well. Now, think of it this way. Like today, quite a lot of startups are actually facing, issues with like, raising fund in this kind of climate. And they also, raising fund is not exactly easy, because you have to, go through a lot of layers of compliance. For instance, if you want to do an IPO on, in New York Stock Exchange, for instance, you need to go through many layers of IPO. You need to go through many layers of audit and compliance. So we want to actually extract away all those tedious process for them, and that's why it makes sense for these Web2 companies to come, come tokenize their equities and launch on our platform. And in doing so, it actually differentiates our launchpad, because when Web2 companies actually join, our ecosystem, it actually adds a certain layer of legitimacy to what we are doing here. Imagine today, for example, big companies like maybe Uber comes to us and say, hey, look, I want to actually tokenize my assets on your platform. This adds a lot of recognition and legitimacy, not just to our project, but to cryptocurrency as a whole. And lastly, we can also introduce NFTs, and then get users to stake their NFTs for added rewards. So in sum, these are some of the things that we are looking at in building for our launchpad. Now I go on to the second idea, which is the launch pool. And the launch pool will be launched after the after we actually have done the launchpad. And launch pool is very similar to the idea of a launchpad, except that in a launch pool, projects are still able to list their project tokens. However, in this case, projects are not expecting in return. So take it as, this project just wants to, donate their project tokens, a certain amount of their project tokens, to our community, just so that, they can gain more credibility and recognition. And from a community's perspective, what we then do is we stake our DFI or DMC token, and periodically we will then be able to mint and earn the project token that this project has actually donated. And this means that the community does not run any risk of losing their DFI or DMC token at all. Your token will still belong to you. It is just staked in a pool, but you are constantly receiving new tokens from these projects. And what happens is that when this kind of project token like goes up, it actually goes up by quite a lot. So from a community perspective, it makes a lot of sense to invest in a launch pool because you are getting zero risk for a potential very high return. Now, in sum, there are three benefits to the entirety of the DeFi chain community. Benefit number one, again, it encourages buying of DFI and DMC from the supply pool because to participate, you definitely need DFI and DMC. Secondly, again, it brings in new users to our ecosystem. And lastly, it locks up DFI and DMC because to participate, you need to actually continue to stake your DFI and DMC. So that's it for launch pool. So to give a very layman perspective, right? Launch pool is like a Santa Claus. It's just constantly giving out gifts to people of our community. Now let me segue into hackathon. Hackathon, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. This was actually in the previous CFP round where we actually, through the support of the community, we raised 350,000 DFI, and of which 300,000 DFI will be allocated to prizes, and 50,000 DFI will be used by Birthday Research to do marketing. And so what this 50,000 DFI is going to go towards will be, so for example, marketing on CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, and various publications, just so we raise attention and awareness of the hackathon and also of the DeFi Meta Chain itself. Because the hackathon is going to be the very first, beachhead in which we are actually announcing the DeFi Meta Chain. And so it is very important that we do adequate marketing for this hackathon. And what happens is that initially, when we first proposed this hackathon, we were thinking of working with this organizer called DevPost. But after talking to some other hackathon organizers like DoraHacks, we decided to switch to DoraHacks instead. That's because DoraHacks will be doing the hackathon marketing free of charge for us. So from a community perspective, we actually save quite a lot in terms of marketing. And this actually was the reason why we now have 50,000 DFI to do additional marketing on CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap. In fact, one thing I learned recently from DoraHacks partners is that they are actually the biggest engine that pushes project for Binance Accelerator program. This is something that I'll talk about later. But so basically, Binance has a huge $100 million accelerator program. And that's actually one of the key engine of Binance success. And DoraHacks partners told me that they were actually the ones that pushed the most amount of projects to Binance most valuable builder accelerator program. And so in my call with the partner, they actually committed to us that they will help also in pushing projects and developers to a $100 million accelerator program to actually help grow our community. So that's it for hackathon. Yeah. And lastly, I want to talk about the the $100 million accelerator program that we've seen a lot of buzz over. We actually released this Reddit CFP 2 days ago. So why do we actually want a $100 million accelerator program? What is the motivation behind it? So again, it boils down to the question of how do we grow the DeFi chain community, And one of the first things we did was we actually went to research, what are some of the things that other top blockchain projects are doing that has actually worked for them. And we managed to find out that actually, a lot of the top blockchain projects out there, they actually have some form of accelerator program, and it ranges from 100 million all the way to 1 billion, which is actually for Binance itself. And Binance in particular has one of the most successful accelerator program, which they call the most valuable builder program, NVB for short. And this NVB, here's how it works. So for example, before the NVB begins, they will actually announce, hey, all projects that are interested to participate in the NVB, you can just, register. And what happens is that when NVB starts, projects will have 2 months to actually, make sure that their project is actually launched on the mainnet. And what happens is that in these 2 months, Binance will actually shortlist at the end of 2 months the top 20 projects in terms of the most number of TVL, the most number of community votes, and also the most number of community strength, which is basically the number of Twitter followers they have, the number of Medium followers they have. In round two, so the top 20 project will go on to the round two. Now in round two, projects have 1 month in which to grow their TVL and community members as much as possible. And we'll shortlist the top 10 projects in terms of, again, the same metrics, TVL, number of community votes, and the community strength. And these top 10 projects will each receive $10,000. And in round three, Binance will then again shortlist the top 5 projects, and the top 5 projects will each receive $100,000. They'll receive mentorship and a chance for investment from Binance Labs, which is their investment arm, which is like the Cake DeFi venture equivalent. And let me just quickly sum up the achievements of the Most Valuable Builder program. So in the first season where Binance launched this Most Valuable Builder program, over 650 projects participated, and they collectively contributed to the creation of 100,000 new active addresses that are holding BNB. And these projects that were shortlisted further contributed to a growth of $50 billion TVL. And Binance so far has launched a total of 5 seasons of MVB program. So in total, Binance actually only gave out 4.4 million in terms of grants for billions of TVL and a lot of publicity and a lot of like new community users that are holding BNB. So that's why we actually wanted to do something similar, because sometimes it just makes sense to see what's the recipe of success in other projects, and we try to emulate that based on our context. So here's what we want to do. We are raising 10 million DFI, okay, to actually create a similar program. And what the 10 million DFI would be used for is basically for the top 10 and top 5 projects. And the top 10 projects will receive 10,000 DFI, the top 5 projects will receive the 100,000 DFI. And what this really means is that if we want to do 2 rounds of this program every year, that amounts to $600,000 every round and 1.2 million DFI used per year. And we know that it is a difficult thing to actually get the community to buy in with such a huge amount for something that's not exactly proven. That's why we want to break down the funding into 3 phases. In phase 1, what we really need is 1.2 million DFI to validate our idea. And only if in phase 1 we prove that the amount of TVL grown is far more than the 1.2 million DFI we give out, that's where we will then ask for funding for phase 2. Phase 2 will need 2.4 million DFI to run the program for another 2 years. And again, the same metrics apply. We need to grow more TVL than the amount of DFI we give out. And lastly, in phase 3, we'll ask for a total of 6.4 million DFI. Now, 10 million DFI, while it's a huge sum, is not exactly a big enough sum to attract tier 1 publications like CoinDesk, Bloomberg and Yahoo to actually publicize about our program. And so we want to actually make the fund bigger. So that's why we actually turn to Cake and we ask them, hey Cake, can you actually help us in this regard? Can we collaborate on this? And Cake very generously put forth a total of $9 million in their Cake DeFi venture fund to actually help spruce our accelerator fund to a total of $100 million. And this also goes to show how invested Cake is in terms of the DeFi chain ecosystem. It is not just saying that it is confident, it is actually putting money forth towards this cause. So now what would the $90 million do from Cake's side? Basically, Cake is actually lending us its name, its reputation, plus boosting the fund to $100 million so that we can then, get a chance to entice the attention of the tier 1 publications to actually publicize about our $100 million accelerator, as well as, DeFiChain and DeFi Meta Chain itself. And this $90 million will be invested in the top 5 projects. So basically, at the end of the round 3, there will be top 5. There will be 5 top projects, and they will each have a chance to pitch their project idea to the community at Cake DeFi Ventures. And if the community likes the idea, they will then invest in the projects itself. So let me sum up, what's the purpose of this $100 million accelerator program and what we're trying to achieve. There are three key purposes. The first purpose is really to entice the best projects in other EVM chain to come and build on our DMC. And that's because really, when projects come over to DMC, they bring about new D apps, which is new content for our users. They bring about their organic community in their, blockchain. And they also bring about a lot of liquidity for us. And all this really translates to one simple fact. It will lead to an increase in demand for DMC and DFI token. Second purpose is really to provide funding to help accelerate the growth of the top projects in DMC. Why do we want that? It's very simple. When top projects in the ecosystem grow in terms of TVL, they directly contribute to our TVL as well. So currently, DeFiChain has a TVL of around 658 million. Imagine, one project just grow in terms of 100 million TVL. That will actually translate to our TVL growth as well. Now, the last thing is really to generate publicity via the tier one publications to jumpstart the success of DMC. Because just because we launch a EVM chain doesn't mean that people will readily come and start building on us. We need a lot of publicity and attention on this, this EVM in order for it to be a success. It is super important to actually get publicity. And so to actually create this kind of publicity, we really need the tier one publications to come and publicize. And that's why we need such a huge fund, because only with such a huge fund will they be interested to publicize about us. So in general, right, actually, DeFiChain and DMC is really a fantastic project, but we really need more people to know about us. It is time for us, we have spent 2 years maturing, but now it is time for us to actually break out our shell and tell the whole world about how good we are. And I just want to give everyone an example. When Crypto.com's Chronos EVM actually, launched $100 million accelerator program, it was actually publicized across all the different other, publications. And that was actually during a bull market. Now imagine in a bear market where we actually launched a $100 million accelerator program. Think about how receptive the tier one publication would be towards the announcement of such a huge fund, despite there being a bear market. It will all the more show how committed DeFi chain community is to growing the blockchain ecosystem. We are not just in it for the money. We are really here to actually grow and make a significant impact to the blockchain community. Now, the team here at Birthday Research, we are super appreciative of the support that the community has rendered to us. We have seen the number of upvotes on the Reddit, and I think the number of upvotes as well on our announcement on Telegram. I think it goes to show how much you guys trust us, and we will definitely not abuse this. We are 100% convicted and committed to making this work, and this will not be done alone on our end. We will actually continue to collaborate with the community, find areas of synergy to actually bring this $100 million accelerator program and DeFiChain to the next level. So in sum, DMC Hackathon is the first touch point to bring attention to our DMC, DeFi Meta Chain, and DeFiChain ecosystem. Alongside with it, they also bring about new potential projects that will go into our Launchpad and Launchpool pipeline. And successful projects that have launched our Launchpad and Launchpool can then participate in the DMC Accelerator program. And likewise, any good projects that come out of DMC Hackathon can then be channeled towards, DMC Accelerator program as well. And I just want to, maybe share a bit about a bit of teaser here. So we didn't actually conceptualize all these ideas without, interviewing, top crypto projects from other blockchains. So our team actually reached out to some of these projects, and one of the top teams on Chronos, I think at the height of the bull market, they actually had a TVL of 2 billion, and I think they had a TVL of 1 billion on Polygon. They actually gave a soft commitment to actually launch on our DeFi Meta Chain ecosystem the moment it's ready. And that is just one of the many projects that will come. And so with that, I just want to conclude my presentation. I just think that it's a truly exciting time ahead for DeFi chain community, and I just can't wait to be able to share more of these products with you guys as soon as it's implemented and concretized. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, it really looks you're hyped about DeFi Meta Chain. You're on fire with this topic. I saw it in your face. You cannot wait that everything is live and we can start to build on it. Really, really great. Thanks for showing us the 3 different parts there. I think it helps a lot of the community members to get an impression. Yeah, what is DeFi Meta Chain and how do we want to push it? Thanks for it. So then we have a lot of questions in the chat. I just switch the screen and then we have a look on the questions. I will read it and then the best of you 3 can answer it if you like. So I would start with my DeFi chain. Are there any estimates for the performance of the servers for the masternodes if the validation for the DeFi Meta Chain has to be done additionally? I think they're asking because they are hosting a lot of masternodes and want to know, is there any additional performance requirements to their servers? Who can answer it? Fusing?
Yep. Okay, so I think it's a great question. So there's actually this is under issue 97 and issue 99 of the Meta Chain repo. So I think we also think about this quite significantly. I think we would be doing. I think there was a question about economics also. I think this is going to be introduced with economics. So the Meta Chain consensus, at this stage, we are still looking at whether to have it basically those native chain runners, whether we are going to require all native chain to process all meta chain execution, or whether are we going to do it on a phase approach. And if you're going to use a phase approach, what kind of economical incentives are we going to introduce? Because we are very well aware that part of the DMC embedded into the same domains as it is. The server profile and the server maintenance and the operational flows of what we are comfortable with today will require everything to change. And this is not operational friendly for many of us out there, even individuals like us that operates nodes. And we have having to reconfigure ourselves will take a lot more time. So this is, we're looking at more of a phase approach and economical incentives over a period of time. So this will be sort of, we will create a proper documentation talking about this when the time is to come to move the when we are moving it to requiring all native chain runners to run DeFi Meta Chain. So that's the answer for now.
Okay. Then next one, is it possible to change native coins to DeFi Meta Chain coins in the Light Wallet? I think it's a normal user using Light Wallet as a product. And now question is, DeFi Meta Chain, how can I get access to it?
So I think this is something that I've been talking to the people working on the DeFiChain wallet. So I think it's very important to allow that kind of interpolability on the Light Wallet itself to easily move assets. So the answer is yes for now, but maybe not the moment it's launched, but maybe we only allow it from the CLI at the start. But yes, definitely we are going to introduce it on the Light Wallet.
Cool. Then the next tricky question. If I bridge to DeFi Meta Chain while doing a native transaction at the same block, what happens? Is it possible or?
So this answer will be very similar to if you do a swap and you do a transfer at the same time. Only one will go through.
Then regarding masternode, will every masternode mint DeFi Meta Chain blocks, or will there be an incentive for the validating? You tackled a little bit.
Yep. So I answered that question previously. So yes. So the answer is economics will be at play to incentivize validation.
Okay, and then a longer question over 2. So I understand that a lot of new users will come into the DeFi chain system and liquidity will go up. But if a project collects DFI in exchange for project tokens to fund development, Then go on. The result is per saldo the same. Buyers buy DFI to exchange, but the project will be a seller. With the staking, it's different, of course. I think the one or other comment here would help. It's I think regarding the launch pool, right? How does it bring the DFI price up, or are the DFI locked then away from the market? Maybe the one or other explanation.
Let me answer this. So it's actually very simple. There are a few layers of mechanism to this. So when projects actually launch on our launch pad, right, they're actually collecting DFI, but they're not just collecting, DFI and DMC for no reason. To actually go about in their daily activity, they still do need to have DFI and DMC liquidity. If not, they cannot actually ink any transaction on our block. That's number one. Number two, the launchpad is kind of like the gold standard when it comes to project. Now, even without launchpad, right, any project can just come to our ecosystem and just do their own initial coin offering. But how is our launchpad different from other random projects that are launching token? Is that firstly we have our layer of vetting where our internal team will actually vet the project in terms of like, hey, who are the founders here? What's the nature of this project? Is there any possibility of rug pull and stuff like that? And also there's a secondary layer, which is the community. The community will also get a chance to vote on the top projects. So basically, right, all these projects that want to come and launch on our launchpad will have to pitch to the community and ask and show why are they deserving of a spot in the launchpad of in our ecosystem. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Next question. I suppose we would then have a project token economy trading function on the DEX. Is it additional DEX? Is it the native DEX? Or I think here people are asking if there are new tokens created, how can I swap from one to the other?
I presume this is with regard to the launchpad and launch pool. So basically, think of the launchpad and launch pool as a new website in which there will be new projects listing every month. And on top of that, right, there will be a DEX function on this platform so that people can then swap. For example, let's say you got a lot of new project token, you want to actually swap back to DFI or DMC, you can actually do that via this DEX on the webpage itself. Yeah.
Okay. Then is there any question again? Here I have to read, hey all, I love the idea of the Launchpad launch pool and accelerator program will be great. Last round there was a big discussion about not funding for-profit companies. What are the differences here?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So actually, I've answered that several times in the Reddit, but I'll just state my against here. No problem at all. I think it's a very reasonable question. So basically, right, in the traditional CFP, right, the people or rather any companies that come here to actually raise fund, right, they might not have a product that is out there. They are actually untested and unproven. They are just actually soliciting fund to actually build up their business, and they have not contributed to the DeFiChain community at all. Period. But in the case of the accelerator program, all these projects will have to have already launched their project on our mainnet, and they would have to contribute a certain amount of TVL growth to our DeFi chain community. So in this case, right, they have already contributed to our DeFi chain ecosystem even before they are actually getting this fund. And so think of it this way, we're just rewarding them for their good work. They have actually grown 200 million TVL for us. So now we're just giving them 100,000 DFI. If let's say they win the top 5 spot, I would think that that's actually a pretty reasonable proposition. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And last question so far, is it possible to transfer D tokens from the beginning? I think it's the transfer between native and DeFi Meta Chain.
I think this question is for me. So by design, the contracts, the 4 functions that I wrote operates on the D tokens level. So by design, we are designing for that. So we might change it to UTXO. I think by now you guys are familiar that DFI have a few permutations. So you have it on the UTXO layer, you have it on the account layer. So D tokens all are operating on the account layer, and therefore we chose the token layer to be the one that breaches the asset. So similar to how the vaults work, you have to use your account balances to deposit into the vault. So yeah, so that will inherently support all the tokens. and therefore allow domain bridge the tokens into Meta Chain. I guess that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, great. Okay, and that's all from the question, but we are not at the end. We still have one topic. U-Zyn, your part is still missing, and I switch back to the scene because I think it's a really interesting topic you want to show us. And
Yeah.
we
Wow,
should.
there's a lot of very exciting talks today and a lot of good questions being asked today. Hope you guys can still pay attention for one last one. I promise to be quite fast. So Fuxi is talking about the bridge that's internal within DeFi Meta Chain and DeFi Native Chain. So one of the things I want to talk about is on the ERC20 bridge. So if you see the icon here, we have DeFi Chain and Ethereum. So this answers one of the questions that was asked as well on how do we bring DeFi Chain and D tokens to Ethereum, where all this where there's a wider community on the whole DeFi side. So before I get into that, I just want to get everyone on the same page here. So why bridge is important? Like bridge is very important because it helps to bring liquidity to a blockchain ecosystem, especially if that ecosystem is not Ethereum or Bitcoin. If you're two of the largest one, then you're fine because people need to bridge to you rather than away from you. So if you're Ethereum or Bitcoin, you just stay there. If you're not, then you want to build a bridge to Ethereum or Bitcoin so that you can get the liquidity from the other blockchains. But we talk about bridge. It's a very taboo word, especially this year. We've seen a lot of hacks on bridge that's operating around many blockchains. This are the two of the most recent one. Yeah, the bottom one's a rather small one, 1 million, but it's still a major thing as well, especially when the blockchain is going to be quantum resistant. And Binance one that's a really major one that got hit. So, and across the whole year, we've seen over $2 billion worth of hacks happening on the bridge side. So with all this knowledge, it's very important that if we do this bridge, we have to make sure that they are safe and they're secure. So before we got into the implementation, I just want to again, especially for new viewers here, just also get everyone on the same page here. So on DeFi chain side, we have DFI being a native token, and we have DeFi asset token, basically the tokens that are backed on some native chain. So these are like DBTC, DETH, the Litecoin. So all of these tokens are on DeFi Meta Chain, but they are also completely overbacked on the native side. And thanks to DC, that's completely tracking that. So you can be sure that all these tokens are fully backed. And these are the tokens that are available right now on the asset tokens that are available on DeFi chain right now. And in order for you to go in and out of DAT into the native side, you would go through one of these exchanges like KuCoin, DFX, Cake DeFi, or DeFi Bridge. Depends on what you want to do. So KuCoin is more on the DFI to ERC20 DFI side. DFX, they have a BTC, DBTC bridge, and Cake DeFi. There's the bridges across all these others, and DeFi Bridge from Dr. Daniel Kugara that's providing the bridge over to the BSC side. So there's all these bridges that are bringing liquidity into and out from DeFi chain. So the user experience for all these bridges is that all the three that we have over here requires KYC, except DeFi Bridge, where it's not a KYC bridge. So for a public open blockchain, it's not great for adoption if you need to go through a centralized service for that. You need to go through KYC for that. So it's not great for adoption. So can we do better here? So bridge, what is the function of a bridge in order for us to design a good a functional bridge here? So bridge, if you're really new to the blockchain side, it basically serves two functions. It goes into and out from the blockchain, and in terms of the DeFi chain side, let's use Bitcoin for example here. So if you want to get into DeFi chain side, you would swap BTC to DBTC. So you will lock BTC on the Bitcoin blockchain side, and then you're going to mint DBTC on the DeFi chain side. Excuse me. So that allows you to get into the ecosystem. And if you want to come out from DeFi chain, you want to get back your BTC, you will then burn the BTC that you minted on DeFi chain side, and you're going to get a release of the same amount on the Bitcoin side. So this allows user to go in and out of DeFi chain with a functional bridge. So how could a bridge go wrong, right? So one of the first thing that which Fusing also covers just now is that cross-chain consensus is very, very hard, or even close to impossible, because we're talking about consensus that are completely independent across two different chains. How can you make sure that they're aligned, right? How many confirmations that you need to wait before you're safe to release the token? Or they could also reorg. So cross-chain consensus is very, very hard, and a lot of them relies on relayers. So relayers may lag or may fork, or some of them may also lie. So that's the thing that we're looking at. And some of them try to do on-chain verification. It's also really, really hard. It's acting like a layer 2 verification to try to verify a transaction from the other side. And we've seen a lot of bridges got hacked this way. So when you try to really come up with ways to verify other EVM chain on your chain. So Vitalik has famously tweeted on this one that it's really hard to do a cross-chain bridge across multiple consensus because you're not in the same domain, like what Fusing says. So on this side, just to also add that on native side, on Meta Chain side, it's completely safe because it's in the same domain, it's in the same zone of sovereignty. So we can control 100% on that. That doesn't even need any relayer because it's all part of the consensus. On the other issues, it's all security issues, smart contract bug to do a bridge, collusion. If you have a decentralized bridge involve multiple parties, they could collude and sign and drain the back Bitcoin, and also keys getting hacked, right? So if the hacker manages to steal keys to unlock vaults or to mint DBTC or to mint the token, then you could have an unlimited mint there. So, excuse me. So what are the risk impacts? So there are all these risks that we talk about. Also, we should quantify the risk impact for some of these. Like if due to cross-chain consensus that DBTC or BTC are released or minted and then the chain reorg, so these are erroneous release, it's bad, but how bad could it be? Like the impact is low. But if you have a leaked keys or collusion, the attacker could drain the backing coins entirely, or you could mint under the number of DBTC. In our case, that would be bad because the impact is really, really high on this one. So we really want to avoid the big impact one and try to minimize the chance of having the low impact one. So the proposal here, or what we're going to be working on, it's a centralized KYC-less bridge, because it's centralized because we don't have a clear, good way yet on how to run a complete decentralized bridge, but we have a clear model on how to run a good centralized bridge. But how we take out the KYC part, so this bridge is going to be completely instant. I just use the word instant, but it's more like fast. You don't have to deposit and then wait for withdrawal. You just basically do a swap and you get it out. And there will be a small fee, but it's not paid to Bertha. So it's also not paid to operator. It's basically being used. The fees, sometimes the fees are there not because anyone wants to make money, it's just to prevent spam. If it costs you something, it prevents spam, right? What if, like, we get so much spam in an email today? What if sending an email costs you 1 cent? We're gonna eliminate spam all around the world. So if you could have that on email server, you're gonna have to pay 1 cent. That would be great because we'll start eliminating spam. So it's for this reason that there will be a small fee for this bridge. It's not paid to operator. It's for anti-spam, and there will be a very, very simple UX. And how to mitigate the risk of ruin where you get the really bad um, like keys got stolen and you got drained everything. Um, so the way that we do it is by having a sensible limit that's enforced not only on the application side, but also as part of the consensus on chain. So you want to prevent the worst thing that could happen where the keys, because this bridge it's live and on the internet. So if the keys are leaked, what's the worst that could happen? So the worst that could happen is that the attacker could mint the full amount for that day. It could be 50 Bitcoin or it could be 100 Bitcoin based on what the consortium has said. So there's a talk on that back in May. So there's a limit on how a member of consortium can mint. So that sets a boundary on what's the loss that that it could suffer because of the hack. So it's not unlimited mint. And on the BTC side, we should also limit the per day release as well. So we're talking about mint on the BTC side, right? So if you on the BTC side, if it's more of a release, so because you lock it up in a address on smart contract, you want to release those. So how can that be enforced? We're talking about not just protecting the keys. We're talking about a hard security enforcement that you cannot overcome even if you have the key. So how can that be enforced? And because so I'm gonna skip that for now and moving on to the third point. Because there's still limited swaps per day, hence the fees are required. Otherwise, you're just gonna spam it all day. You're gonna drain the limit, and then no one can use the the bridge because you're just gonna spam it. Like if you have a fee to pay, then it's gonna cost you some money to spam it. So and the fees itself, because they're not used for anything, fees would buy USD and via the DEX and then burn the USD because this brings benefit to all of us DFI holders and USD holders. So this will be done in a open and trackable way, just like how the DBTC burn is being carried out right now on chain. So on the UX side, if we're talking about BTC, so let's just focus on the large tokens on the DAT side. So we have BTC, we have ETH, we have USDT and USDC, and the rest are the others are not that major. So we should start with the major ones first. And all of them are, if you look at these four, all of them are on Ethereum except BTC. So if we don't do on the native Bitcoin side, how about we do it on Wrap BTC, which is a very established coin on the Ethereum side? If you do that, then everything is on Ethereum. So that makes the whole UX whole lot simpler, and you can work with MetaMask on that. So basically, on the UX side, there'll be a website. You go there, just like if you use any other blockchains that has a bridge, you go there. You just use MetaMask, connect your MetaMask to that site, and you're gonna send the Bitcoin or send the Wrap Bitcoin or send the ETH, send your CT or whatever. You're gonna enter the DeFi chain address, and you're gonna get it once it achieves a certain confirmation. So it's very similar to Kagara's bridge there on BSC side. So that experience becomes very unified. So therefore, we should do the WBTC so that the whole experience is all just everyone's going to be very familiar with MetaMask, right? So and back to risk of rain mitigation. So how do we then prevent on the BTC side? So with WBTC, there is now a smart contract that we can implement that. So there's going to be a hard rule on the smart contract itself that prevents that release. So all that WBTC is going to be stored in the smart contract. There'll be a really hard rule. It's going to be a very, very simple smart contract because it doesn't have to be complicated at all for this. Just basically locking it up and then set a hard limit on how you can withdraw per day. And that's it. So that's a hard rule on that smart contract. So very limited release per day. And if shit hits the fan, because we always plan for that, like what's the max damage the attacker could do if this bridge gets hacked? It's the max of 2 days of cap because if the attacker is smart, you're gonna do it like right when the clock ticks over. So you're gonna do it like 11 hours, and they're gonna do it in 12 hours, so that you can do like 2 days. The max damage is 2 days of cap because then everyone's gonna detect that, and immediately the bridge is gonna be stopped and damage completely capped, right? So it's not completely. Is it bad? Yes, it's still bad, but it is bounded versus unbounded. bridge that we've seen so far that's happening in many places. So in this case, it's a hard rule to enforce that the damage limited. So it brings all the good UX, brings it centralized in this case to work, because this is a major bridge. We want to make sure that it's really safe. And right now we don't have a workable, provable, completely trustless bridge anywhere just yet. So therefore, you have to take a very safe approach here to do a centralized bridge, completely automated. No one's manning in, having a hard security enforced on consensus. So in summary, I just want to compare the three different bridges that we have over here. So a centralized side of change and decentralized bridge, basically referring to more of the bridges that we see on out there today, and also the ERC20 bridge that we're talking about here. So the safety for all these different mechanisms has a very different profile, right? So if you talk about centralized side, the safety mechanism is high. We haven't seen much of that like drain on site, because if you're a custody side, you have to make sure that you have really high security standards there. And on the centralized bridge, we're seeing so many hacks around there because it's still really, really hard to do that correctly. And I'm pretty sure we're going to figure out one day a safe way to build a centralized bridge, just like how atomic swap is now kind of like a proven model out there. So it's going to be, we're going to get there someday, but not yet today. So on ERC20 bridge that we have on this model, it's going to be centralized. So therefore the safety part is high. And on the loss limit on the centralized side, because safety is really good, so none. And on the centralized bridge, it's unbounded, but on ERC20 bridge, it's capped. So the loss that you could sustain from this is just basically within that cap limit, and enforced on chain on consensus. On both DeFiChain side and also on the Ethereum side, it's completely capped. And on KYC, centralized side, you need KYC. So the centralized bridge, you don't need that. And on this ERC20 bridge, you don't need that as well. Basically, it's MetaMask, plug it in, and you're going to be able to use it. On the UX on centralized side, it's slow. You need to deposit, you need to withdraw. But on bridges, you just connect, wait for your confirmation, you get your swap coin. So that is how it's going to be. So yeah, this is coming soon in Q4, just in time for the DMC. So all this will bring into all this ecosystem to connect everything together and allowing DMC to connect it even better to the DeFi chain, to the Ethereum side, and allowing more liquidity to flow in and out into the system, and also tie in nicely with Launchpad as well. So all this is going to be really awesome.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks. You know that Q4 is already running, yeah. So it's a matter of weeks and not months left. Cool. Thanks. There are no additional questions in the chat, and today it was a really long tech talk version, but a lot of things to present from your side. I would say thank you for joining this show, presenting us what you're working on. I think it's a great format, yeah, to show the community what's done behind the scenes. We are currently looking on the now, and you are on working on the future. So a lot of things are coming, and DeFi Meta Chain will be a great thing on DeFiChain. U-Zyn was really hyped during the presentation, and we should take this part with all of us, and looking forward to DeFi Meta Chain. So thanks for the show and coming on stage presenting your work. Then see you next Tech Talk. We have to schedule it. It's not planned yet. We will announce it on all the channels. Maybe then with some more details about Launchpad, Launchpool, accelerator program, and so on. Cool. Then see you soon. Have a nice time. Bye bye. So